one of the other things that I forgot to mention is why there's duct tape around this plastic bottle. Intake manifold's off, and I'm going to try to get this for you guys, but if you look inside, it's pretty bad. I want to take some time to show you guys what these look like now. Hopefully you can see these a little bit better now. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are going to be working once again on my 335 XI with a random glove. And it's just going to be some general maintenance that everybody has to do on these engines. And that is the walnut blasting. Now, if you don't know what that is or you haven't done it, you can look it up. But ultimately what happens is you have this engine has direct injection, and because of the way the injectors are plumbed, they spray fuel directly into the chamber versus outside before the intake valves and exhaust valves. Therefore, you don't get that wash for the valves, and what happens is you end up getting carbon buildup on those valves, and it starts to affect your performance and all sorts of other things. Now, to get that going, you can of course take this over to the dealership and they can charge you a couple $100, or you can do it yourself. Now, the reason you're probably watching this video is because you're interested in doing this yourself. So let's figure this out. There's a couple of things you're going to need. This is not very difficult. You can actually do this at home. I think the largest thing you're going to need, and probably the most expensive, I guess, if you don't have one, is a compressor, because you are going to have to use compressed air for this. Now, the sandblasting, what you're going to want to use is walnut shell. Now, of course, all this stuff is basically bought at Harbor Freight, and I wouldn't buy it anywhere else. But got some walnut shell, got the blowgun kit, this guy here. I have, of course, this little swivel plug, which will allow me to articulate the gun. And I have this guy, which you can't buy on like in a store. You have to get online. At least I don't know if you can buy that in the store. I got mine online. It was like 20 bucks. But ultimately, what you're gonna do, the first step is, and of course you have this bottle. Now, this bottle is just a random bottle. It's a fairly stiff bottle. I think it was from like a Powerade or Gatorade, whatever it is. That's gonna be your hopper. So the way you do this is you get one of these guys. You take this longer bar, or yeah, I guess I don't know what to call it, but anyway, that goes on top of, or on this guy here, which is where you're going to be blowing air out through. This then threads through here, which is where you're going to make the hole. And what you do is you put a little hole on this guy here, right in the center. So when you put this into here, the hole ends up in the center, and when you flip this up, the walnut media will feed into that hole, and the air will push the walnut media out. So that's how that whole setup works. And this thing will probably cost you a total of like $6 to make. Now, the way this works is you put it into your into the head, and under here you have a hole, as you can see here, and up here is where your vacuum will go. Oh yeah, you also need a vacuum cleaner. So you plug it in, you turn on the vacuum cleaner, you make sure that the valves are closed, you put this inside of this hole here, and you just blast, and then you look inside. You can use carb cleaner, you can use other things to kind of loosen up the carbon in there. Typically, I haven't used anything in the past, or haven't tried it, just because, you know, it's not, I don't know if it makes that big of a difference or not. It didn't for me. I just went ahead and used it. And then after you're done with one, you got to check to make sure before you do this that the next one you're going to do, the valves are closed. If the valves are not closed, you want to crank the motor till it's closed, and you can do that a few ways. One of them is, of course, you get a socket and a ratchet, get under onto the crank bolt, and then you can crank it, put it in neutral, then crank it. Or what I'm going to do is a little bit more lazier, and I don't really feel like taking this pipe off. There's intake pipe and then going from the bottom. So I'm just going to take this off, pull the plugs, and then I'm going to attempt to just kind of try to start it. It'll crank, and then if I get lucky, the cylinders that are closed are the ones that I'm going to be doing the walnut blasting, and eventually I get lucky enough to when all of them are closed. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and remove all this stuff, show you guys what it has to look like before you begin this project here. Of course, the reason I have these gloves here is because, of course, you're going to need gloves, and then make sure that you're also wearing safety glasses, as that's probably one of the more important things as far as PPE goes. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this guy here, and I'll show you guys what that looks like before I put the whole setup together and start using it. Okay, so to properly set this up and get the hole in the right place, you want to screw this into the gun, right? Because you're going to be holding the gun like this, or maybe a little bit at an angle, but this hopper is going to be flipped up. So you want the hole to be on top up here. So don't just randomly grind away at this thing thinking that it's going to line up, because it has to be tight into the hole, or into the gun here, for the hole to be facing the right way. So tighten it all the way up, and then up here grind away at it, and that'll be good. Don't be too concerned about if it's 100% up, because this bottle is going to be kind of articulating as you're working on this here. So as you kind of move around, you know, the bottle is going to have to move around. So the hole just has to be in a general upright location, and that should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and grind away at it and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so I got this thing modified, and as you can see, when I hold this little gun up, the opening is facing upwards, and it's relatively tight on there. It's not super tight, and this is going to act as my sandblasting gun when I put the bottle on there. Now, what I've done here is I've already taken apart the engine bay. As you can see, the intake manifold's off, and I'm going to try to get this for you guys, but if you look inside, it's pretty bad. Like the caking on the valves is pretty bad. And mind you, if you guys haven't seen the other videos for this car, I did have to replace the turbos because they were leaking, got a bunch of oil into the system, didn't have a catch can, the whole 9 yards. So now I have that. I'm going to go ahead and do the sandblast, or the walnut blasting, and see if it actually is going to help, because I forgot to mention to you guys, the car is running kind of weird. Has this weird sputter in the beginning, kind of like this acceleration issue where like you press the gas and it doesn't quite take off, and then it takes off. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to clean the throttle body here. As you can see, it's got a little bit of gunk on there, so we'll see if that helps. Alright, so here's what I got going on. I got the vacuum cleaner hooked up over to this port right here. I verified that both the exhaust and the intake valve are closed. I got my setup here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the vacuum on and make sure that the vacuum is taking the walnut out as I blast the walnut in here. Now keep in mind, you're going to have to articulate this a little bit, and it's not going to be perfect. The other thing I should also mention is it's kind of weird if you're doing this alone. It's kind of weird to try to get this to seat on this at the right angle. So I usually just use like duct tape or whatever. You get the right angle, you close the gap with the duct tape, you turn it on, and it works just fine. It's not the prettiest, but it works. So I'm going to go ahead and, before we start, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what this looks like in there. Don't know if you can see in there. Let's see. But it is really, really gunked up. So I'm going to see like a before and after of what it looks like. Alright, that's a good angle there. Good angle. We'll see how well this works. Now that we've gotten a few of these ports done, you can look inside and see how much cleaner they are, right? And one of the things that I learned or figured out here, I'm still working on this one right here, but if you get them closed, And now I'm not saying you should do this, but if you just so happen to accidentally get some gas in there and you let it sit for an hour or two, it just so happens to do the same thing that port injection does, which is clean off a lot of that carbon buildup for you, so to make this whole walnut blasting thing easier. Now, I accidentally did that to all these ports, and they're coming out very, very clean, and I figured I'll show you guys a few things as you're doing this that might help you. Now, I already covered this whole setup, which, yep, it's duct tape, doesn't matter. It gets the job done. But one of the other things that I forgot to mention is why there's duct tape around this plastic bottle, which when you do this whole walnut blasting thing, you're actually going to pressurize this bottle, and it will eventually crack. So I ended up having to put some duct tape around it. And then these holes that you put through this bottle up here need to be real tight, so this guy can fit in there and it's nice and snug, because you don't want to lose a lot of pressure out of the bottle. You want it to go out this way. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys roughly how I do it. The clearing out, the tilting, and I'll bring it back and then clear it out with some air, and I'll show you guys what it looks like inside. Alright, so I accidentally pulled the thing out of the hole here, so I got walnut everywhere, but that's alright. We'll do a little bit of a cleanup. And as you can see here, if you look inside, it looks pretty darn clean. Of course, I'm going to go in there, do a little bit of a cleanup job. Got to vacuum all this stuff up. Probably makes sense to put like paper towels and stuff in the other ones that you don't want walnut to go in there. I actually pulled the spark plugs, and I'll be turning the engine over, just making sure there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in there, and I don't hydrolock it or anything crazy like that, because I did use the gas in there. But so far this has been fairly easy. As you can see, when you leave the gasoline in there, you could probably get away with just spraying one bottle of walnut. You basically go into one port, you start out far, and then you go in and then out, and then you rotate, right, because those things are going to ricochet everywhere, and you're trying to get in the pocket over here in the valve. So you shoot it up, it'll ricochet down, come out, and then you do the same thing over here. And then before you pull the gun out, I flip the bottle back, and then I just shoot air in there to get the walnut pieces to kind of aerate, and they'll get sucked up by the vacuum cleaner. So 4 down, 2 more to go. This is also a very good time. Obviously, pull your plugs, check those. Coils. Yeah, I mean, you can get your high pressure fuel pump down here. You got a lot of things you can play around with if you're doing this already. If you got your valve cover, you're pretty close here. So think about that if you're planning on doing this job anyway. Now after I got done doing the walnut blasting, I took a, I don't know, 3/8 hose, just duct taped it onto my vacuum cleaner, good old duct tape, and then just basically vacuumed up everything, made sure that there's no leftover walnut shells anywhere. I want to take some time to show you guys what these look like now. Hopefully you can see these a little bit better now, but they are looking pretty darn good. The car should run much better now. The only difficult one was this guy back here, simply because you can't get the angle, but I'm not too concerned with it. It is definitely much better than it is. I am going to go ahead and crank it over a few times just to make sure everything functions properly as it should before I start putting everything back together, and start it up to see if that made a difference or not.